met someone in our lives who has influenced us or changed the way we thought. I want to try and paint a picture of just such a man who 20 years ago changed the way I looked at people forever. His name was Pastor Malcolm Pears, a pastor in the Seafarers Mission, sadly no longer with us. I lived in Portugal for many years before coming to Sussex. Malcolm used to come out there to caretake the church at which I worshipped, whilst our own pastor went on holiday in the summer. He and his wife would often tag on an extra week onto their trip and come and stay with us. Always delightful guests to have. Malcolm was as round as he was tall and exuded a radiance about him that was infectious. He used to sing loudly all the old hymns in the shower every morning and embraced every day with an enviable joy. One morning, whilst watching me make a cup of tea in my usual way, tea bag in a mug, he exclaimed in his jolly way, "Don't you have a teapot? How can you have a swimming pool and no teapot?" His parting gift to me that holiday was a teapot, which I still use to this day. He wasn't a great scholar or theologian, just an uncomplicated man captured by the love of God, and it was there for all to see. If you can, please hold this picture of this gentle man while I relate the rest of my story. I really want to talk about what I shall call the queue of hope. Many of you know that I work as a nurse out in the community. Having worked throughout the first wave of the pandemic and during the summer and autumn, I will admit to being quite weary and anxious about the second wave and the virus mutating. In January, I was unsure and fearful about continuing at my age. But I knew that after prayer, God would have a plan for me. And the opportunity to join a COVID vaccination centre arose, and I joined a team at a local hub, sidestepping community nursing for a while. This has been the most amazing opportunity for me, and I am honoured to be taking part in something so positive. More than that, it has given me time to reflect on where God can be found and how we can see him in people around us and how much he loves us. This year we've seen many queues at supermarkets, testing centres, and sadly at food banks, and more recently at vaccination centres. It has made me think about queuing. As a nation, the British are apparently the best in the world. The author George Mikes said, "An Englishman, even if he is alone, forms an orderly queue of one." During the Second World War, it is said people on the home front saw a queue and joined it, not exactly knowing what they were queuing for. When we queue, we have expectations and hope and a trust that what we are queuing for will be worth the wait. The queue at a vaccination centre is an absolute leveller. There is a kaleidoscope of humanity in that one queue. Nobody can change place due to rank or status, and everyone is in it together. One of my roles at the centre is the pre-screening of patients, so I'm asking a series of questions to ascertain the person's suitability for the vaccine. With masked faces and only eyes visible, I encountered all sorts of people that touched my heart. The gentleman who clutched the hand of his wife of 70 years, who now sadly has dementia. The foster mother of a young adult wheelchair-bound with special needs. She called him my special one. The frail, very elderly lady who hadn't been out of her flat for nearly a year. The weak, middle-aged man fighting cancer, but desperate for a jab so that COVID wouldn't rob him of his last few precious months with his family. The young girl in her early 20s who had already spent 20 years with a life-limiting disease. The grandmother who was desperate to hug her new 7-month-old grandchild after her first grandchild was stillborn. And the young chap with Crohn's disease recently released from prison. These are just a few examples. The act of queuing made me wonder whether it featured in the Bible. Jesus was in such a queue, waiting in turn for John to baptise him. As the Messiah, you might have expected him to be set aside and receive special treatment. But he was just in the midst of ordinary people, humbly taking his place in the queue. The fact that Jesus immersed himself in the midst of humanity opened my eyes at the vaccination centre that God can be found anywhere and at any time and in any circumstance of our lives. So now, as I face these masked people and ask the same questions over and over again, I am struck by the words of my old dear friend, Pastor Malcolm Pears, spoken to me all those years ago. Caroline, you will never, ever lock eyes with someone that God doesn't love.